This is a story of greed, deception, and betrayal. It's a tale of the ultimate con artist, a man who masterminded the biggest financial fraud in history, leaving countless victims in his wake. His name is Bernie Madoff, and he stole a staggering $65 billion in a Ponzi scheme that shook the world to its core. With a complex and elaborate Ponzi scheme, it was a masterpiece of deception that even the smartest minds couldn't unravel. From Wall Street mogul to convicted felon, this is the unbelievable story of how one man's insatiable appetite for wealth and power led him to commit one of the century's most heinous crimes. So buckle up as we take a deep dive into the dark and twisted world of Bernie Madoff. Imagine a world-renowned magician using his sleight of hand to deceive his audience into believing they were witnessing the impossible. Bernie Madoff was that magician, but instead of entertaining crowds, he conned tens of thousands of people in a fraud so massive it defied belief. For over 4 decades, Madoff orchestrated a financial illusion, luring clients from 125 countries with promises of extraordinary returns. From ordinary folks to celebrities like Nobel Peace Prize winner Elie Wiesel and iconic director Steven Spielberg, Madoff's web of lies ensnared them all. You see, Bernie Madoff's fraudulent scheme was not just any scam. It was a sophisticated and elaborate plan that made it one of history's most enduring and far-reaching Ponzi schemes. And just like a magician, Madoff used a clever trick to maintain the illusion. He claimed to execute trades for his clients, but he was simply depositing their funds into a Chase bank account. Using a pyramid scheme, he paid off new customers with funds from earlier customers, while providing his clients with falsified account statements. Those statements showed jaw-dropping $50 billion returns, but they were nothing more than a mirage. Bernie Madoff's scheme was a masterpiece of deception built on years of lies and deceit that would make even the most seasoned con artist envious. He managed to convince his victims that he had discovered a secret investment strategy that would earn them incredible returns. Madoff was a master of the art of manipulation, using his charisma and connections to lure in unsuspecting investors. He would promise them significant returns and deliver just enough to keep them hooked. He knew precisely how to play on their greed and fear, using his influence to silence any doubts or questions they may have about his operations. His scheme was so elaborate that he even hid it from his family members. His sons, who had worked for him, had no idea that their father's business was a massive Ponzi scheme. It was only after they discovered Madoff's fraud that they turned him in, leading to his eventual arrest. It was at this time that Madoff's magic act finally came to a screeching halt on December 11, 2008. The biggest investment fraud in U.S. history was finally unmasked, but the damage had been done. The illusion was shattered, and Madoff's victims were beyond devastated. The sheer scale of Madoff's fraud was breathtaking. He had managed to steal as much as $65 billion from his victims, leaving many of them penniless and devastated. His investors came from all walks of life and hailed from over 125 countries, making his scheme truly global in scope. The fallout from Madoff's fraud was enormous, with many investors losing everything they had worked for years to save. Some of his victims were forced to postpone retirement plans, while others had to sell their homes and downsize their lifestyles. The financial industry also suffered a significant blow to its reputation, as Madoff's scam revealed the flaws in the regulatory system. The scandal that rocked Bernie L. Madoff Investment Securities was a financial earthquake, with its aftershocks reverberating through the investment world for years to come. It was a seismic event that sent shockwaves through the financial world, leaving investors reeling and trust in tatters. The timing couldn't have been worse, as it came on the heels of the already damaged financial crisis. What was even more staggering was the fact that it had gone unnoticed by the Securities and Exchange Commission for years, despite repeated warnings from independent investigator Harry Markopolos. Markopolos had been on Madoff's trail since the turn of the millennium, poring over his phony returns and sounding the alarm bells. But the SEC chose to look the other way, opting to take Madoff's word over the damning evidence. Bernie Madoff was no ordinary Wall Street player. He was a larger-than-life figure who'd been at the helm of his own firm since he was just 22 years old. For more than 5 decades, he'd been a titan of finance, renowned for his expertise and savvy. He was even appointed non-executive chairman of the NASDAQ in 1990, a testament to his stature in the industry. He was a key player in developing the very systems and market structures that transformed the stock market from the trading floor to modern electronic trading. But the glittering facade was built on sand, and when it finally crumbled, it revealed a web of lies and deceit. And despite his achievements, the fall from grace was steep and swift, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. The story of Bernie Madoff was indeed a gripping tale of deceit and downfall. For years, he had lived the high life as a Wall Street superstar, charming his clients and amassing an impressive fortune. He was jet-setting around the world and rubbing shoulders with the rich and famous. However, his carefully constructed facade began to crumble when the 2008 financial crisis hit. With redemption requests flooding in, Madoff found himself in a precarious position and became trapped in a web of his own making. He knew he couldn't keep up the charade, but he had one last trick up his sleeve. He planned to distribute millions in bonuses to his employees, then shut down the firm before anyone realized what had happened. It was a bold plan, but it wasn't meant to be. Madoff's own family would ultimately bring him down. When he finally confessed to his sons that the entire investment advisory business was nothing but a sham, they were horrified. Senior managers in the trading operation knew they couldn't stand by and watch their father destroy the lives of so many innocent people. They immediately alerted the authorities, setting a dramatic chain of events in motion that would ultimately lead to Madoff's downfall. The FBI raided his offices the next day, and Madoff soon faced a mountain of federal charges. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Madoff continued to insist that he had acted alone, even as his family's involvement in the business came to life. His wife kept the books, his sons were senior officers, and his brother was the chief compliance officer. Yet Madoff claimed they knew nothing about his nefarious activities. But in the end, justice was served. Madoff was sentenced to 150 years in prison, and the staggering scale of his fraud ensured that his name would forever be synonymous with one of the biggest financial scandals in history. And while Bernie Madoff claimed that his family had no knowledge of his wrongdoing, the trustee appointed to recover funds for investors was unconvinced. Irving H. Picard sued a number of people and entities alleging complicity in the fraud, and even went after Madoff's family members. Sadly, the suspicion and guilt proved too much for Madoff's older son Mark, who tragically took his own life on the second anniversary of his father's arrest in 2010. 4 years later, Madoff's other son, Andrew, lost his life to lymphoma at the age of 48. While Ruth Madoff, Bernie's wife, has denied any knowledge of the fraudulent scheme, she has settled with Picard, as have the estates of Mark and Andrew. In the end, over a dozen individuals, including Peter Madoff, were convicted of federal crimes related to fraud. Even J.P. Morgan Chase, Madoff's primary banker, was also implicated in the scandal. The institution had to cough up a whopping $2.6 billion to the U.S. government and victims of the fraud in 2014, after allegations that it had not maintained adequate controls. Although the bank reportedly made some reforms, prosecutors ultimately dropped charges against it, leaving the impression that justice had not been fully served. But despite these reforms, the Madoff scandal remains the strongest cautionary tale of financial corruption and its far-reaching consequences in recent history. The year 2021 marked a bittersweet victory of the Madoff Victim Fund. The milestone recorded was both a triumph and a tragedy. Former SEC Chairman Richard C. Breeden, who served as the fund's special master, revealed that a staggering 37,000 victims had been compensated. What's truly remarkable is that most of them were able to recoup 80% of their losses, an unheard-of feat in the world of Ponzi schemes. In Breeden's own words, beyond the loss of tens of billions of dollars, the human consequences of the crime were almost incalculable. But beneath the surface, the Madoff scandal truly left a trail of destruction that's difficult to fathom. The financial ruin may have been catastrophic, but it pales compared to the emotional and psychological toll it took on the victims. Many lost their independence and had to rely on others to meet their healthcare needs. Parents and grandparents alike were forced to watch helplessly as their children's futures were snatched away from them. The heart-wrenching stories of those who lost everything, their life savings, homes, and dignity, are enough to make even the most hardened souls weep. Now, while Madoff's scheme may be a thing of the past, its aftermath continues to linger. The impact on these victims' lives is immeasurable, and the road to recovery is long and arduous. But there's hope, as according to Picard, the pain experienced by the victims of Mr. Madoff's fraud is not diminished by his death, nor is our work on behalf of his victims finished. My legal team and I are committed to continuing to identify and recover Mr. Madoff's stolen funds and return them to their rightful owners. At his 2009 sentencing, Bernie Madoff faced his victims with a simple phrase: "I'm sorry." But as the years went by and he remained behind bars, the disgraced financier made a brazen attempt to rewrite his legacy from prison. In a surprising turn of events, Madoff began to claim credit for the recoveries made by his victims, insisting that he had pressured his biggest investors to return some of their money. According to him, they were terrified of the damning evidence he'd gathered about their complicity, and so they wisely came forward with settlements. However, those claims were quickly shot down by federal investigators who found no evidence to support his story. Even more troubling was the fact that Madoff's supposed remorse was starting to seem like an act, adding another layer of deception to his already notorious legacy. Bernie Madoff took his last breath on April 14, 2021, after suffering from terminal kidney disease. The mastermind behind one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in history had been confined to a prison cell for years, serving a 150-year sentence for his heinous crimes. His death marked the end of a dark chapter in the financial history of the world.